The horizon bled crimson as the dying sun cast long, twisting shadows over the streets of Silver Creek, a town that had endured drought, bandits, and greed, but had never faced a darkness like this. Every weathered building bore the scars of time, splintered shutters, faded paint, and boards nailed in desperate repair. Dust coated everything like a thin veil, crunching under the boots of men who had worked this land for decades. At the edge of town, Sheriff Thomas McCall meticulously polished his revolver, the cold metal smooth beneath his hands. 40 years of law-keeping had taught him that a man's tools were as important as his courage. He had witnessed the chaos of life on the frontier, watched neighbors perish to fire and gun, and had survived threats both human and natural. But tonight, as he adjusted the cylinder of his Colt .45, he could not shake the uneasy feeling that the town's fragile peace teetered on the brink. Inside the sheriff's office, Clara McCall, his daughter, packed a small satchel with essentials: dried meat, a water flask, coins, and a letter to a friend in the neighboring county. She was clever, sharp-witted, and stubborn in the ways of the West. Her father had always warned her that curiosity was a dangerous companion in Silver Creek, yet she could not resist the thrill of discovery, the pull of adventure that the frontier seemed to demand. Unbeknownst to her, shadows moved along the main street. Not mere figures, but masked outlaws, 5 in number, mounted and riding hard. Their leader, Cole Harlan, was a man whose reputation preceded him: ruthless, cunning, and unafraid to bend law and morality to his whims. He had spent months tracking the sheriff, learning his routines, and tonight his prize was clear: the sheriff's daughter herself. Clara moved quietly through an alley behind the general store, unaware of the eyes tracking her. The air smelled of dust, horse sweat, and distant pine smoke from the surrounding hills. The shadows shifted closer, silent as death, until a rope snapped around her waist, yanking her to the ground. Her hands scrabbled at the dirt, her breath caught in her throat, but strength was short-lived against the gang's practiced grip. Within moments, she was hoisted onto a horse behind Cole, her satchel clutched tightly against her chest. Dust swirled around them, turning the town's streets into a blur of orange twilight. The familiar sights of Silver Creek, the church, the saloon, the blacksmith's forge, disappeared behind a curtain of dirt and fear. The sheriff, alerted by the commotion, ran into the main street, revolver drawn. He arrived too late to stop the kidnapping. All that remained was a cloud of dust, fading hoofbeats, and a town plunged into silence. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. Tonight, Silver Creek had lost more than a girl. Tonight, its innocence had been stolen. But Clara was not helpless. Beneath her shawl lay an iron box, small, engraved with the McCall family crest, a keepsake from her father. He had told her it contained a secret that must never fall into the wrong hands, something that could protect the town or destroy it, depending on who held it. The Outlaws had no idea of its value. To them, she was just another hostage, a pawn in a larger game of extortion and terror. Cole glanced back at her from the saddle, his voice rough and commanding. "Don't think of running, girl. You belong to me now." Clara's lips curved into a faint, defiant smile. Inside, a spark ignited. She had survived storms, bandits, and betrayals before. She would survive this. And the iron box she carried was a weapon the outlaw could not see coming. The night stretched before them, dark and full of unseen threats. Clara studied the landscape, memorizing trees, rocks, and paths. Each could be an escape route or a trap. The plains were vast and unforgiving, yet she felt a strange comfort in their predictability. Every ridge, every creek, every shadow could be used to her advantage. Cole spurred the horse faster, unaware that Clara's mind raced 100 times faster. The distant sound of wolves echoed across the ridge, a haunting reminder of the wilderness that ruled the frontier as fiercely as any outlaw. Every moment in his grip tested her resolve, sharpened her focus. By nightfall, they had reached a clearing near a river bend. The gang dismounted, slinging saddlebags and checking weapons. Cole pressed her close, a warning in his eyes that she must obey. But Clara's mind had already mapped out possibilities. Weak points in their formation, careless guards, and the slow, sloppy movements of his younger men. "Your father never told you the truth about that box, did he?" Cole said, lowering his voice. "I know more than you think," Clara replied softly, feeling the weight of destiny pressing against her palm. The shadows deepened, the air thickened, and the first stars blinked into existence, silent witnesses to a confrontation that would shape the fate of Silver Creek and everyone tied to it. The night air was cold and heavy, pressing against Clara McCall as she sat astride the horse, the iron box hidden beneath her shawl. Her pulse hammered in her ears, echoing the rhythm of the hooves pounding the dirt road. Each creak, each shift of the horse, seemed magnified in the stillness. Shadows stretched across the plains like predators, alive and waiting. Cole Harlan led the group, eyes constantly scanning the darkness. His gang followed, moving with the practiced precision of men who had survived more battles than most townsfolk had lived years. Clara, though terrified, was not idle. Her mind raced as she fingered the iron box, recalling her father's words. The contents could destroy or protect, depending on how they were used. As they rode, she memorized the terrain, every tree, every dip in the road, every shadow that could hide a path to freedom. She noted Rex Turner, one of the younger outlaws, careless and overconfident, laughing as he spurred his horse. He was the weakest link. Hours passed, the moon rising and casting silver light over the camp. When the gang finally stopped at a clearing, Cole dismounted first, keeping Clara close. The campfire crackled, shadows flickering across the trees. He spoke low, almost conspiratorially. "We move on at first light. Your father never imagined anyone could find that stash. Keep quiet, girl, or you'll regret it." Clara's gaze didn't waver. "You don't know what's in that box," she said softly. Cole chuckled, a sound that carried menace and amusement. "Try me." She breathed deeply, weighing her chances. Inside, the iron box held a map and a key, remnants of a deal between her father and a wealthy trading company. It was more than gold or money. It was leverage. If she played her cards right, she could turn hunter into hunted. The wind shifted. From the shadows emerged Silas Kane, a wandering bounty hunter. He had tracked Cole Harlan for weeks, and now he had found the opportunity he'd been waiting for. Cloaked in darkness, he surveyed the camp, rifle ready, calculating the exact moment to intervene. Clara's heart leapt. She moved subtly, testing the ropes and chains. Rex Turner was nearest, too focused on the fire to notice small disturbances. She nudged the iron box slightly, letting it slide across the dirt to create a clatter. Rex jumped, lunging to secure the object. Chaos erupted. The fire flared, smoke spiraling, and Cole cursed loudly. Clara slid from the horse, rolling into the shadows. Silas fired a warning shot, sending two men diving behind logs. The night became a swirl of motion, mud, and fear. Every heartbeat carried her closer to freedom. She sprinted toward the tree lean, the iron box clutched tightly. Cole roared in fury, rallying his men, but Clara had momentum and cunning on her side. By dawn, she vanished into the forest. Only hoof prints in the mud and a single, iron box told of the struggle. Cole Harlan seethed, unaware that the girl he thought powerless held the key to his downfall. The sheriff's daughter had turned the hunter into the hunted, and Silver Creek would soon learn that even the strongest men could be undone by a secret, a clever mind, and the courage of one determined girl. Dawn broke pale and cold over the plains, the mist curling around sagebrush and creeks like ghostly fingers. Clara McCall pressed herself into the shadows of the forest, her chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon. The iron box was clutched tightly against her chest, the cool metal pressing into her palm, reminding her of the stakes she carried. Every heartbeat was a drum of tension, every rustle of grass a potential threat. Behind her, the pounding of hooves and the guttural shouts of Cole Harlan's men grew louder. They had realized she had escaped. They knew the forest would not hold her for long. The plains stretched endlessly, a mix of open grasslands and rolling hills. One misstep could leave her exposed. But Clara had learned to read the land like a book. Every ridge, every hidden hollow, every creek bend was a potential ally or a trap. Silas Kane, the bounty hunter, had been trailing the gang since sunset. From the cover of a distant ridge, he observed their movements, rifle ready, calculating distances and timing. Silas was precise, ruthless when necessary, but he also knew the terrain better than any man in the area. He had been waiting for the perfect moment to intervene, and Clara's daring escape had provided exactly that. Clara ran toward a dry riverbed, her boots sinking slightly into the soft, sandy soil. She paused, listening. The outlaws were catching up. She could hear the distinct shuffle of Rex Turner's boots, the curse of one of the older men, and Cole's growling command. "Don't let her get away. Split up and surround her." She took a deep breath and darted toward a stand of trees. If she could make it through the forest, she could gain enough ground to force the gang into disarray. But the plains offered no true refuge. The outlaws knew the land well. Every ridge, every rock outcrop could be an ambush. Rex Turner was the first to approach her. He swung a lasso, aiming for her legs. Clara ducked just in time, letting the rope snap harmlessly past. She rolled into a hollow, the earth damp beneath her palms, her shawl muddy and soaked. The iron box remained untouched, her lifeline against the outlaws' plans. From above, Silas Kane fired a warning shot. The bullet whistled past Rex's shoulder, sending him sprawling to the ground. A shout rose from Cole. "Shoot her! Don't let her escape!" Gunfire erupted across the clearing. The sound was deafening, a chorus of rifles, revolvers, and hooves pounding against the earth. Clara pressed herself flat, heart hammering, her mind racing. She had to stay alive. She had to keep the secret in the box safe. Cole Harlan, riding hard, caught sight of her as she darted across an open stretch. His face twisted with rage. He raised his revolver, firing in rapid bursts, but the distance and the rising terrain worked in Clara's favor. She slipped behind a ridge, breath ragged, blood pounding in her ears. Silas descended from his vantage point, moving quickly through the underbrush to flank the gang. He was the shadow that no one saw, the unseen force that turned the tide. He disabled two of the outlaws with precise shots, forcing Cole to pull back momentarily, his fury barely contained. Clara reached the edge of a creek, water rushing over stones. She paused, considering her options. The creek could slow her, making her a target, but it also offered concealment. She dove into the shallow water, letting the current mask her movements. Her heart raced. Every second counted. The outlaws were closing, their shouts now carrying over the rushing water. Cole was furious. His gang was scattered, some injured by Silas's precision, others struggling in the mud. He barked orders, trying to regroup, but Clara's cunning and the bounty hunter's interference made coordination impossible. Every plan Cole had counted on now crumbled like the dust beneath their boots. Clara crawled to the far bank, pulling herself up, drenched but alive. The iron box remained secure. She ran into the forest, branches scraping her face, roots threatening to trip her. Yet she pressed on. Silas emerged from the shadows beside her. "Keep moving," he whispered. "They're regrouping, but you have a head start. Stay low and follow me." Together, they moved like phantoms through the misty trees. Clara realized the plains and forests that once felt open and tame now seemed like an obstacle course of life and death. Each step, each decision carried consequences. One wrong move, and Cole Harlan would have her, alive or worse. Hours passed. They navigated through dense forest, rocky gullies, and hidden hollows. The outlaws' shouts faded as the morning sun burned through the mist, revealing the vast expanse of plains ahead. Clara looked back once, seeing the distant figures of her pursuers, men driven by greed and anger, but no match for determination and strategy. Finally, they reached a hidden cabin, a safe house Silas had discovered weeks ago. Clara collapsed onto the wooden floor, soaked, exhausted, but alive. She opened the iron box briefly, confirming the contents remained untouched. Relief washed over her, but the weight of the journey and the looming threat of Cole Harlan reminded her that the fight was far from over. "You'll be safe here for a while," Silas said, checking the perimeter. "But we need a plan. That box, it's worth more than you know. And Cole Harlan will stop at nothing to get it." Clara nodded, determination hardening in her chest. The chase had been brutal, the plains merciless, yet she had survived. She had outsmarted the outlaws, relied on courage, and now had an ally she could trust, a man who understood the stakes, the land, and the lawlessness of the frontier. The sun climbed higher, revealing a world both beautiful and dangerous. Clara realized the journey ahead would test her limits, push her past fear and doubt, and force her to confront Cole Harlan in ways she had never imagined. The plains had proven themselves merciless, yet they also offered the chance for courage, ingenuity, and survival. And Clara McCall was determined to seize it. The sun had barely risen above the horizon, casting long, golden shafts of light across the rolling plains. Mist clung stubbornly to the gullies and low hills, weaving around the trees like ghostly fingers. Clara McCall stood at the edge of the forest, the iron box pressed tightly against her chest. Her boots were caked with mud, her clothes torn and wet, yet her eyes shone with determination. Today, the chase would end. Silas Kane adjusted his hat and scanned the landscape, spotting the distant dust clouds rising over the plains. Cole Harlan's men were closing in. The gang had not given up. They had regrouped overnight, fueled by anger and the relentless promise of revenge. But Silas had a plan, and Clara had courage, two forces that Cole had underestimated when he thought he could control a girl with a secret. "We can't outrun them forever," Silas whispered, "but we can make them pay for every mile they've followed you. Every step of this land works in our favor if we know how to use it." Clara nodded, breathing deeply, letting the morning air fill her lungs. She felt the weight of her father's legacy in the iron box, not just the map and key, but the promise that courage, intelligence, and honor could triumph, even in a world as lawless as the frontier. They moved toward a ridge overlooking a narrow canyon, the perfect place to strike. Cole Harlan and his gang approached, confident in their numbers, their brute force. They did not anticipate the traps Clara and Silas had prepared. Spiked logs, concealed pits, and rigged tripwires lay in wait, silent yet deadly. Clara's hands shook only slightly as she set the iron box down briefly, preparing snares along the ridge. Each trap had a purpose, each pitfall a lesson in the ruthless logic of frontier survival. Silas covered her from above, his rifle trained on the lead outlaw, ready to intervene if needed. Suddenly, the first rider appeared at the canyon's entrance. Rex Turner, the careless young outlaw, rode hard, laughing at the supposed ease of capturing Clara once more. But he was too late. The ground beneath his horse gave way. The trap set just moments before sending him tumbling into a concealed pit, his shouts echoing across the plains. Cole's fury erupted. "Move! Don't stop! Bring her down!" he bellowed, his revolver drawn, eyes blazing. The remaining outlaws faltered, confused by the sudden collapse of one of their own. Clara and Silas moved swiftly, darting between ridges, using the high ground to their advantage. Silas took down two more men with precise shots, forcing the rest to scatter. Cole's eyes narrowed. He had expected compliance, resistance, fear, but he had not expected cunning, planning, or strategy. "Stop running, girl," Cole shouted, spurring his horse. "You think the plains will save you?" Clara, heart hammering, reached the edge of the canyon where a series of hidden ledges allowed her to descend quickly while remaining out of sight. Silas covered her retreat, firing warning shots to keep the remaining men at bay. Each step carried the weight of potential discovery, each breath a mix of fear and resolve. Finally, the two of them reached the narrowest point of the canyon, a place where Cole's larger horse could not maneuver easily. Clara gritted her teeth, readying the iron box for the final act. She had memorized the map inside. It led to a hidden mine, a labyrinth of tunnels and natural cover. Cole Harlan had no knowledge of it. The outlaws arrived, dismounting in haste, rage etched into every face. Cole raised his revolver, hand steady, eyes fixed on Clara. But the girl was no longer just a helpless captive. She held the power of her father's legacy, a knowledge he had never expected her to wield. "This ends now," she said, voice strong, unwavering. Cole lunged forward, but the ground shifted beneath him. Silas had rigged a tripwire that sent the outlaw sprawling into a concealed pit, the iron box secure and glowing faintly in the sun's first rays. Cole cursed, scrambling, but the canyon's walls confined him. Clara's traps, Silas's sharpshooting, and the unforgiving terrain had turned the hunter into the hunted. "You underestimate the McCall name," Clara said, stepping forward, her boots crunching on gravel. Cole's pride and fury clashed with the reality of the moment. He was trapped, outwitted by a girl he thought weak and a bounty hunter he had ignored. The remaining men surrendered, realizing their leader's plans had crumbled. Silas lowered his rifle. "It's over," he said quietly, yet his eyes scanned for any last threat. Clara approached Cole, holding the iron box aloft. Inside lay the documents and map proving his crimes, evidence enough to bring him to justice. The sheriff's daughter, once a pawn, now held the power. "You thought you controlled me," she said softly, "but the frontier has its own law, and it's not yours to bend." Cole's face twisted with fury and defeat. He had underestimated courage, ingenuity, and the spirit of a girl who refused to bow. The plains, the forest, and the canyon had all conspired to show that even the strongest man could be undone by wit and will. Weeks later, Silver Creek began to heal. Clara returned home, greeted by her father, who embraced her tightly, relief and pride mingling in his eyes. Silas Kane departed quietly, leaving behind the legend of a girl who had outsmarted outlaws and survived the merciless frontier. Clara opened the iron box one final time. The secrets inside had been preserved, the McCall legacy intact. She had faced fear, betrayal, and death, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The plains stretched endlessly beyond Silver Creek, a reminder that the frontier was merciless, but it also rewarded courage, cunning, and perseverance. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the town, Clara McCall stood atop the ridge, the wind carrying whispers of the past and promises of the future. She had survived the impossible, outwitted a notorious outlaw, and protected a legacy that would endure for generations. The frontier had tested her, and she had triumphed.